Well, good morning, everyone. My name's John Dauberstein. I'm Senior Editor at No-Till Farmer. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled Conventional Corn for No-Till Farms. Before we get started with the presentation, I have a couple of housekeeping items to go over. On your screen, there's a control panel with a Q&A icon. You can submit questions there at any time during the presentation, and we'll take those at the end of the presentation. We are recording today's session in the event you want to go back and watch it and share it with anybody. So keep an eye on your email after this webinar is over if you need to refer to it. And with that, let's welcome our featured speaker today, Bass Hybrids owner Ed Baumgartner. Ed is a plant breeder and researcher dedicated to breeding conventional corn seed using no-till and regenerative practices. After decades of working with the largest corn seed companies in the world, and witnessing how the industry standards of using high nitrogen tillage and pesticides lead to decreased soil fertility, Ed began working on breeding plants for building soil health, not depleting it. Ed now owns and operates multiple companies that work to produce and market new genetics with natural resistances to biotic and abiotic stresses. So, without further delay, let's turn the show over to Ed.
Well, thank you, John, and good morning to everybody listening. Hopefully we'll have a fun and engaging session when we get done doing a little presentation here. Look forward to questions. So I'll share a screen right now, or correct, John, and get started here. Let me see here. Make sure I can get this up. Okay. So we're Bass Hybrids, and we work in only conventional hybrids, and we basically call it unconventional for a few reasons, and you'll see why as I work through the presentation here. But this is basically an overview of our office in Danube, Minnesota, and we do not allow any GMOs in our warehouse. And we just want to keep our distance from that world with this brand, because we're working towards regenerative agriculture and soil health with our retail business. So we also have contract research businesses in Minnesota, here in Olivia, just 5 miles from our Danube facility. And we keep them separate so that there's no conflict of interest between our contract work and our retail work. We have two staffs that we run each business individually. And we've been doing contract research work basically to pay for my corn breeding habit. And so we have not only the Olivia location to do that at, but we also have our Puerto Rican business in San Isabel, Puerto Rico. And we're situated right near the south coast in the center of the island. And this is where it all started for us. And it's a very challenging environment to grow a crop in. And that challenge has led us to what we call DuraYield, and the development process where we utilize all those stresses to our advantage rather than just fight them all the time. We follow what the stresses show us on the crops that we're growing. We've grown 22 different crops, and so we can see some of the effect of what we're doing go over different crop species as well. But our DuraYield work, for the most part, has only been done in corn. We've done a little bit in soybeans, but we decided to stay focused on corn until we get this well underway into the marketplace. If I had to do anything over, I'd probably start retailing corn as soon as we started breeding corn. So then 20 years later, people know who we are. Our retail brand's been operating for 9 years, so we're finally getting some recognition in the marketplace. And we have 4 generations of our family in the corn business. Started with my great uncles. You may recognize the name Trojan Seed Company, and then later maybe RBA Seed Company. And then we had about a 36-year gap, and then we started Bass Hybrids retail brand. But it's our companies then are the Bass Hybrids, Bass Genetics, which holds all the intellectual property. And then we have our contract research organization under 3MG North and 3MG Puerto Rico. So I must say that we can't do this alone. So we work with Kyle Klein from KMR and his Summit Genetics business. And so he works on the fuller season products for our retail brand, and we work on the early side, we're based in Olivia, and he's down in Carroll, Iowa. And we worked together since 2011 on a handshake. And so far it's been working out well. It's nice to have somebody that uh, you can challenge each other with and be creative and check out what rabbit holes we should go down next, I guess. So we talk on a regular basis and keep coming with new ideas and see how we want to pursue them in our own individual businesses and then bring the fruits of that relationship back together. So you may ask, why unconventional corn? Well, the number one thing for me is we have to say unconventional because when people think conventional, all of a sudden they think, okay, that's cheap seed or cheaper price seed. And there's been 30 years of marketing for, GMOs are best. You're going to lose your crop if you don't have a GMO in it. Today I would argue the other way. You're going to be better off with conventional or unconventional corn than GMO corn. But hopefully we can show that to you later why I believe that. But the other problem with conventional corn and why it's been called cheap is several brands have tried to resurrect old off-patent hybrids and bring them to the market. And let's face it, they're old hybrids. They were good in their day, but they're not keeping up with today. So uh, our genetics are fresh. We've been working on it for 20 years, and we always go select checks that are the best in the industry that are GMO. We have to go head to head with the GMO checks to bring out our conventional products into the marketplace. Otherwise, as a farmer, you don't want to take a yield hit when you make a change. And you can have some cost savings with non-GMO genetics over GMO genetics. And we do our own breeding work. We do our own hybrid testing, which for a independent company there's not too many of us that do that out there. There's very few breeding organizations left in the States. They've all been swallowed up by the large companies, and we value our independence, and we value farmers being independent. We want to help that. And so if you do a GMO, all that, no matter who you buy it from, all that money leads back to the big corporations and their control. So we hope to be offering a fresh face for more independence and you control your operation. So we do have a little bit of a mantra of saying breeding for resilience, not reliance. And that's why we put everything through the rigorous stress breeding and testing protocols that we have. And because the resulting products then are very adaptable and they'll tend to produce a crop when other hybrids will fold up. And so we definitely have higher levels of drought tolerance and heat tolerance and insect tolerance and some even GMO products. We do not use any CRISPR techniques or GMOs in our development at all. We want to stay pure classical corn breeding with our own twist on it. Our breeding program has been modeled a little bit after the shuttle breeding design or uh, model that Norman Borlaug used for wheat. When I was being educated in plant breeding, we were told that you have to breed corn where you're going to sell it. That's not true. You got to breed corn where you can put all the stresses on it that you need to select the right inbreds. And then when you sell the hybrids, those have to be tested where you're going to sell them, or at least tested in a similar environment to where they're going to go. And so we really take research work serious. That's our lifeblood. And just to give you a kind of a snapshot of what goes on, we have to cover the silk from the ear shoot prior to it emerging. And when we see the silk, like what's in the photograph there, then we know it's time to set up a bag, like what's in the next frame, so we control the pollen that goes from the tassel to that ear. That ear shoot stays covered until it sets seed, like in the third panel. And then we harvest everything and bag it up and row tag it to keep track of it. We between Kyle's program and our program, we look at around 6,000 brand new hybrids a year. which is a significant number, 6,000. And uh, and with a discard rate of probably 95% when it's all said and done. So we look a lot and throw a lot away, but when we find the winners, those are the ones that end up in your fields as a farmer customer. So what does DuraYield look like? Uh, we look a little bit retro, I think, if people see our hybrids, because our genetic base was we went back to the older patented products that when they're off patent, we started breeding with them, and we work in very tight families of corn to allow us the most combinations possible. The current breeding industry has worked its way into let's say males and females. We've used molecular markers to make sure that we're in different heterotic patterns with our base family material. And so we identified 14 different families that we want, and we're currently working in 11 of them right now, different families. And so good inbreds are very difficult to come by, and when you find one, you want to be able to make up as many hybrids as possible with it. And that also allows you to go into very specific situations. So we know that certain genetics allow us to go into heavy manure applications or corn on corn, or I've got really sandier soils or heavy soils. All these take different genetics. And so when a customer would come to us and tell us what they need, we can generally put together a hybrid in short order for them to work on their farm. And as I'll get into a little bit later in the presentation here, as we've moved ourselves into the regenerative agriculture market, we can really put together hybrids specifically for that, where they can work with cover crops and reduced inputs. So, but this kind of gives you an idea of what DuraYield looks like. We really build a root system from all the drought work, and then the corn leaves get thicker, they get more leathery, and very difficult for the insect just physically to chew on, develop a strong, like I said, strong root system above and below ground. So, so back in 2022 was the first time I planted green and with our research planter, and we're putting on a little starter or liquid pop-up fertilizer at that time. And you can see what it looked like after we terminated the crop after we planted. So we planted first and then sprayed it with glyphosate. And looking back at it now, I probably should have went back and side dressed some nitrogen, or 32% on this field, but we didn't. You remember we're in Olivia, Minnesota, and this is Grand Forks, North Dakota. So you measure every trip you need to take when you're going to invest 6 hours to get to the plot. So, but we probably inadvertently started selecting nitrogen efficient corn in a plot like this and didn't realize it 2 years later what we were seeing. So this is another one of our research group. We got our corn breeder, Susan Johnson's on the right, and then we have my daughter Rachel in the middle and daughter Rebecca on the left. And Susan and Rebecca are planting the corn hybrids. Each packet represents a different hybrid, and it's going to be planted out in either 20 or 40 feet. Then in this case, we were putting on the liquid in furrow treatment. We were planting 40-foot plots, and Rachel's job is to dump the liquids in the planter as we go to be put in furrow with the specific hybrid. And so we do a fair amount of this work with biology for contract work and internally, so we know which of our hybrids work with what biology. And boy, that's a big book to be written yet, because there's so many options out there and what we're looking at. But what makes this a bit complicated on the planter is that the planter is they're dumping in seed 2 plots ahead of what Rachel's applying the in-furrow treatment on. So you see we're headsets, we're talking back and forth. I'm in the planter watching the monitors, keeping track as well as kind of like uh, the backup to the system to make sure that everybody is on the same page. And so it's a little bit stressful when we do this work to get it all coordinated, but it's been very rewarding result-wise on what we learned being able to do these treatments. So we started understanding DuraYield around 2020, and these photos are actually side by side in the same field. Up in our area around western Minnesota, it was a dry, uh, let's say dry spring and midsummer. We picked up some rain at the end of the year, but this is what the crop looked like during the battle. And this is where we really started being able to see the effects of what DuraYield means and what it can do. It's one of those traits that it's very hard to describe, but you know it when you see it. And I know that's not a very good explanation, but it definitely does work. And we've had a couple other droughty occasions to see the same type of activity in. Just to give you a little look, another different hybrid, and compared to a national brand in the same field just in September, where the more traditional type product was all done, ready to go. Our product had mature ears, brown husk hanging on it, and all green yet still putting in test weight. There is a significant yield difference under these conditions. So, I mean, the one of the issues we've had over the years, and I'll be the first to say it out loud, is that our hybrids do not dry down as quickly as what the industry has been accustomed to. Now, as we get in further along into our breeding cycles, we're getting a better handle on that and what selection methodologies to get that into order for us so that our hybrids will dry down. Now, I don't ever want a hybrid that's going to die and dry, but we probably do not want a hybrid that needs a killing frost before it dries down. And that's where we started at when we first brought these products up from Puerto Rico in the like 2017, 2016, somewhere in there, to try and understand so we can get the dry down that we need so that we can meet the farmers' needs. So the early days of our sales were focused on livestock farmers and high moisture corn until we got this dialed in a bit. So again, daughter Rebecca here, even the dog knows the value of our research work, and so she's protecting it, right? Taking a nice nap there. But there's a lot of note taking that goes on and organizing when we do this work. When you're looking at 6,000 hybrids, we probably have somewhere around 3,000 inbreds we're tracking at the same time. So you've got two basic um, programs when you develop corn. So you have an inbred development program, and then you have a hybrid development program. And so the both are critical. And to develop a new inbred, it'll take us roughly 3.5 years in Puerto Rico. And then the yield testing will take anywhere from 4 to 5 years as well. So we're looking at a cycle time of between 7 and 8 years to develop a new hybrid from the beginning. But if we already have the inbreds developed and we just keep crossing, new ones to older ones that we have, or inbreds to other lines that we may be able to work with that are available for crossing with freedom to operate, then we can look at a 3 to 5 year development cycle for a new hybrid rather than the 8 that would normally would if we start from scratch. So this is a look at our Puerto Rico operation for native insect tolerance. And I'm going to try and see if this video works here a little bit. So on the right panel will be the video, and that's the level of insect pressure on our nursery. And on the left, we'll pan over to these rows in that nursery where you see very little insect damage. And I did check it for BT. It does not have it, because all of a sudden everyone thinks that you got something that's not affected by a massive onslaught of insects, and especially fall armyworm. And you can see the devastation in here. It's me over there working. Becca was taking the video. And so you can see the damage on the corn, and that's what we select through when we're working. And so then when you hit a row like that, it does grab your attention. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that, boy, we got something good here. And so we have these aha moments every year where some germplasm pops up and surprises us. And it's pretty cool. And then we immediately turn right around and put this back into our crossing program, these inbreds, to broaden number of opportunities for new lines we can have with this level of insect tolerance. Now, for those of you that don't know, fall armyworms are very aggressive. They're cannibalistic. They eat what's ever in their way, and we can lose our crop in 3 days in Puerto Rico. To give you a little understanding of the level of insect pressure, I can lose a crop in 3 days there. And when we do contract research work for people in our customers in Puerto Rico, I budget spraying insecticides 21 times. That doesn't include our herbicide passes or fertility passes. That's just straight insecticide passes to keep the insects at bay enough to get a crop. And so when we work on this, we go into more of a no spray situation. And to make matters worse, I reduce the irrigation level as well. And so the nursery you see in front of you is very ugly to the right. And I had a source for insects to the left where we didn't spray, and that was hybrid corn. And here we're recycling our saved inbreds to make sure that we maintain our insect tolerance and drought tolerance. I'm sure there's many of you out there that would think this is really ugly and what are you wasting your time for? But this stuff is gold. I mean, these things will reproduce, they get stronger as we recycle them. And it's impressive, but it's really tough work to do this. That's why the big companies don't do this work because it is so ugly and nobody wants to do this. And it takes a long time and a lot of work. We probably spent the first 10 years out of our 20 just building a germplasm base where we thought we could have, or we saw inbreds that could survive the insect onslaught and thought they had enough yield to take north. And that's when we started doing our work in Olivia, Minnesota around 2011, and then the facility we're at in 2013 right now to do our research work. So, so a lot of the GMO started due to insect tolerance and glyphosate genes. And the number one concern I hear about in the countryside all the time is rootworm. And we used a source for native insect tolerance, which then we realized expanded itself not only to the fall armyworm, but it went down to the roots and would keep rootworms away. And inadvertently, it'd keep nematodes away. And all through natural occurring genetic mechanisms, we were able to pull out a tropical corn. And then once you use that tropical corn as a source, you have to de-tropicalize your inbreds so that they can work up in the temperate zone. And we've taken tropical corn all the way down now to our 75-day hybrids. And that's a job. It takes time. You got to recycle, but with the breeding methodologies we put together, it works. And we also combine for rootworm tolerance because so many people are used to, oh, if you don't have BT, you got to apply insecticide. We got to manage this field like crazy. And between the biology that we apply and the native insect tolerance or rootworm tolerance we have, we're able to grow crops on heavy infested rootworm fields. We're not perfect yet. We got a ways to go, but we're uh, every bit as good as putting insecticide out there, or maybe a touch better. And then we're not putting the toxins into the environment to do this. And I think we're going to get even stronger as our next round of or cycle of breeding material comes out. The other concern is European corn borer. That works a little bit differently than the fall armyworm and the rootworm. And so we still keep a good eye on what the European corn borer is doing. The populations are lower due to all the uh, BT corn out there, so that's helping us while we get a handle on it. But we're finding that we're building native insect tolerance for corn borer as well. Uh, at the same time as we're looking for biology or biologicals we can apply that help us. And I think we're almost there. I need to verify some things with data this year and perhaps next, and I think we can make a pretty bold statement about using biologicals to help control European corn borer. As far as the other pests like spider mites and leaf hoppers and thrips and things, we generally have good resistance to those in our corn hybrids just because they're also present in big numbers in Puerto Rico. But for whatever reason, corn doesn't seem to be bothered as much by those as they are some other ones. So just give you an example, so this isn't all just Ed talking, is this is one of our hybrids, a silage hybrid, 105-day silage hybrid pulled from organic silage field in Colorado with 40 beetles per plant, which the grower was going crazy, thinking that it's going to be devastated, it's going to lodge, and they didn't even clip the silks off. It actually pollinated well, and the grower was able to harvest good silage from it. And this plant was pulled out. So those roots weren't chewed off. It should have been dug out, but you see very little damage on there. And this was basically just a genetic tolerance to rootworms that exists in this hybrid. And of course, when we see these real life examples under commercial, we really go back and dig through our germplasm collection of all related materials and re-examine them in this condition. So, like I said, we spent 10 years developing a germplasm base to pull from. And so when we learn something new, we bring it back to the forefront again to work with it. And so that leads us down. The next step is about 2 years ago, uh, well, 18 months ago, I really started thinking about regenerative agriculture and drank from the fire hose, trying to learn everything I can about regenerative agriculture. We had a customer in Kazakhstan where this picture was taken, and he'd been buying our genetics there, and they've been working on his farm, and he has a 2,000 cow herd dairy, and he was struggling to produce enough forage on it or crops on his farm until he decided to treat his farm like a cow's stomach. And so this picture is probably 3 years old, and he he was doing that maybe 2 years before that with our products. And uh, this is really what got me hooked and going down the regenerative path, along with a phone conversation with Keith Burns from Green Cover. And so with this, we realized that regenerative agriculture was a fit. We've been breeding for it for 20 years and didn't even know it. We've also know that from our hybrids not drying down, the biggest reason why, it's what they were doing with the microbes, and that was keeping them healthy. And so we know we have great response to microbes. In our inbreds have been developed, not always with clean fields. They've been weedy at times, and with that, that actually lends itself for us selecting for products that work with cover crops. And so with all the natural resistance we put in, we thought it was a good fit for regenerative agriculture so that we can get more in harmony with what Mother Nature does. So I'm a big believer in diversity, not only in genetics for our corn, but genetics in the biology we apply and the genetics of the cover crops we grow. And uh, like a quick fact is that up until this past year, we were selling corn in 6 states, and this year we went into 22 states because of regenerative agriculture. And we also sold more corn until outside the U.S. until this year. Now we're moving. We found our niche in the U.S. in this market. That doesn't mean we can't work on more conventionally farmed farms, but and we'll probably start working with more of those growers this year because of the market prices, where they're going to look for better value on their seed, which we can offer. But we've been really hitting our stride in regenerative agriculture, and so that's become a big focus for us now going forward uh, in our breeding program. And so, just so you wanted to see what it was like close to harvest, this is two plants in that same field in that skip row work. Those are 2 ears almost the same size on each of those plants. And it was like that through the whole field. And he harvested some for grain and most of it for silage, just so we get an idea what the performance level was. That is irrigated, by the way, in a very dry zone. So and he uses no herbicides and no commercial fertilizer. It was all composted manure from from his farm. He applied some biology from a company out of South Africa, in addition to some biology he grabbed from a nearby woodlands next to a river that he grabs his irrigation water from. And the cool part of this, why I like the skip row work, is that we think we can move over 45 inches and we'll be in rotated ground again because we're where the cover crops were. And so we're working hard on that theory to try and understand if we can do it and what problems may present themselves as we do the research work. But just to give you an idea of the effectiveness of the biology, it's the same guy in the same field, just about 25 feet apart. He's standing where there's no applied biology in the skip row system, and then in the biology applied in the skip row system. So the plants really responded, and this was supplier was from South Africa, and she was saying she'd never seen corn respond like ours before to their biology, and she's been over a lot of Europe with her biology, and she hasn't seen anything like this. And in Africa, of course, she's doing on GMO products, and they don't respond nearly as much as the our hybrids do. So developing the DuraYield concept and all of the associated insect tolerances, disease tolerances, and stress tolerance that goes with it, we started seeing that our hybrids were using less fertility as well. They were creating some type of atmosphere under the soil, underground, that was farming the microbes. And the more I dug into this as I was drinking from the fire hose, is that we were most likely creating relationships with nitrogen fixing uh, microbes, bacteria, and fungi, which then turned itself into healthier plants, which didn't die until we had a frost. I mean, that's kind of what pulls this puzzle all together. We also know that we have higher sugar levels in our corn hybrids once they're attacked by insects. And so that's the beauty of the difference between GMO and non-GMO, is when you use a GMO product, that gene is on 24/7 from the day that seed germinates. Where you use a more natural or approach like DuraYield, where the corn plant decides when it's going to spend energy to protect itself or not. And so it takes a little bit of feeding. And once that feeding goes, the sugar level in the plant spikes. And then the insects do not want to eat a plant with that much sugar in, so they just move away. So we're not killing anything either. We're not creating poisons or toxins. It's just using what nature and the good Lord has given us to uh, produce the crops that we need to produce. And we only learned about the sugar because I was chopping some plants in Puerto Rico, and some were attacked and some weren't, of the same hybrid. And we started seeing the differences that would turn on and off based on the level of infestation by the insects. So that was pretty cool. We learned that. So many of you may have seen a picture like this with from the University of Wisconsin, talking about nitrogen fixing corn. Well, there's mucilage is cool, but that's not the only thing that goes on for nitrogen fixing corn. And that's been pretty quiet over there. I haven't heard of any new developments, but we've been digging in, and we know that the roots exert uh, maybe not a mucilage, but some type of exudate underground that attracts the microbes that the roots want to feed the corn plant what it needs. And so it's really interesting as we dig into this. So we've got 3 years of reduced nitrogen data collected now, and we were working at the, let's say, 40 pounds less or 25% less than what you'd need for a 200 bushel corn crop, using the standard mentality of 1 unit of N equals 1 bushel of corn. Or you could say 1.2 units of N for 1 bushel of corn. And we talk about efficiency. So we did our first work at 25% less. And we were showing some of our hybrids increased yield with less nitrogen. And they increased themselves over what, let's say, competitor hybrids were using or producing with full nitrogen. So it comes down to you get what you select for. And if we've been selecting in, let's say, lower input environments where we're stressing for water, and we inadvertently reduce the amount of nitrogen we put on because we put the nitrogen on through our irrigation water in Puerto Rico. So the plant had to figure out how it was going to make up those deficiencies. So again, a lot of this isn't because we're so smart. It's just that we're paying attention to what's happening when we make changes and trying to understand all the unintended consequences. So as we move forward, we're going to be looking at lower and lower levels of nitrogen applied. And but we have named our trait now symbiotic nitrogen producing corn, or SNPC. Our goal is to release hybrids and have a good understanding of what the level of nitrogen that we can reduce to on those by 2028. We've got a lot of work to do yet to really understand it because it's so much more complicated than mucilage expression. But that is an indicator that things are happening positively. But we know that through our drought work and through our insect tolerance work, we've created corn plants that have space for lots of endophytes that do very positive things for corn plants. So just to give you an idea, in our research work, we've made a simple table here where we look at the same breeding project. 100% is the industry check. And so we look at where our population is versus the industry check. And generally, we want to select at things that, let's say, are 110% and above the check to move something forward on a breeding project. Well, we know we're making ground when our whole project is doing better with less nitrogen than more. And so that's kind of intriguing. And remember before I was talking about European corn borer being a little bit different animal. So we had some native corn borer tolerance we bred into some of our projects, and look how much more efficient they are with less nitrogen versus more. The 100% is still the checks. I found that as a curious uh, thing to look at. So here's what some of our data would look like. We look at low nitrogen and high nitrogen, and I want to be over the checks on both the regular nitrogen and reduced nitrogen to bring products forward. And the cool thing about this as well is that when we start getting products that are better than the checks with more nitrogen, or with standard nitrogen levels and with less nitrogen levels, and then you're producing ears like this on the left, we're hitting on all cylinders with this program. You remember what the ears looked like from our drought work nursery, which were just little nubbins of suffering, to what we have now when we get them into standard conditions. And this is my wife in the other picture making selections out of our F2 segregating nursery. And so, like I said, it's a family affair. We're all involved, wife and our three daughters. And so it's pretty exciting. Just to give you an idea how we look at some of our more finished products as they get through the pipeline, we look at populations, higher versus lower. How does the ear change? We take pictures of it so we can document it if our customers ask. Vanessa, what does it look like at 220 versus 170? This is a hybrid that likes less nitrogen, and you can actually see it in the way the ears look. It's also a hybrid that likes less population. So there's a couple wins with that. And then you can see where we do irrigated and non-irrigated, no-till and tillage. We look at all these different possibilities in our breeding program. I know we're the only breeding program that no-tills for our nursery work, for our breeding work, and we started no-tilling into cover crops a couple of years, 3 years ago now. I interseeded this year with cover crops as well. We got some work to do on that methodology, but there's enough promise there. We want to keep going. So we want to develop the inbreds and the hybrids into the exact conditions they're going to be they're going to be put into. So we always look for yield trials for corn on corn, strip till, no till. We look for corn on wheat, corn on corn, corn on heavy manure, where there's years and years of corn buildup so we can get the rootworm look. So this is how we run our program and why I think we're very unique in the industry as a seed developer. And so with 20 years into it, we finally decided we needed to rent our own farm and take care of it. So we have about 150 acres dedicated to just regenerative ag hybrid development. And now we can do multi-year studies. I can understand rotation on cover crops, corn on corn, moving to cover, reduce nitrogen because it's me or us that's going to suffer the loss if the reduced nitrogen costs us yield, not the farmer we work with. We can look at what different minerals and biology does to the farm. We took a baseline soil sample to know where we started, and then we're checking it every 6 months to see what we have. Um, I mean, and we also did not only the chemical side, but the biology side. So this is what the farm looks like, probably high in potassium, low in phosphorus, and roughly 50 pounds of nitrogen out there available at the start of the year. And this was on the soybean ground, so that fits with the maybe 50 bushel yield they had of soybeans and leaving a pound per bushel behind. And you can see the more micronutrients, let's say. Even with that level of magnesium, we had a magnesium shortage or deficiency on that farm, so we ended up applying that. But for the corn crop that we're growing out there, I did not apply any P or K or sulfur or zinc because our soil tests basically showed I didn't need to. We were monitoring with leaf analysis, and we needed the magnesium additive, so we put that on. We also put on some extracts over the top as part of our fertility program. And then we adjusted the nitrogen based on the test. But you can see this farm was farmed by a young man who was following every recommendation Big Ag told him what to do, and in fact added uh, no-till to it, and was really working at it. And look how low the health is of this soil. And so he wasn't getting anywhere. He's putting on good fertilizer, everything, and it just wasn't building his farm up. And so he decided to not farm anymore. And so we have a very low fungal to bacteria rate on this farm due to all the glyphosate applied, in my opinion. And but the fungal we got out there is not the good stuff; it's the bad stuff. And I'm not surprised with these being the issues, given the genetics that I believe that were planted on the farm the last few years. And so this is some of the measurement for soil health, and we're all very low, and that's how they get the overall rating for not very healthy soil. So we have some drone shots of the farm, what it looks like. This is our skip row work where we're planted 30-inch rows of the hybrid to the right, and then to the left we did the skip row work where we kept the same population but just took one row out. I mean, or we reduced it by 1/3. The in-row population is the same, but we reduced the seed by 1/3, interseeded cover crops. And we've done this on our commercial hybrids to help those in regenerative ag that want to understand about 60-inch corn or skip row corn, what varieties we can do. We're going to have real life data here. I've got about 40 acres dedicated to this work. We also have an area that you'll see in the aerial photo that's coming up where we run our whole pipeline through skip row work. So we can actually select hybrids specifically for skip row work and cover crops. We have corn on corn and corn on soybeans testing going on this year. We have no cover crops planted being compared to with cover crops planted between the rows. We're looking for hybrids that perform with cover crops. And so there's about 70 acres or 80 acres of replicated yield trials in this farm. And you can kind of see the alleyways and the different groups of either 4 or 8 rows of different hybrid look as I scroll through these. This is what it looks like when, you know, before the weeds grew up a little bit here. That happened after another rain shower. But interseeded with the skip row corn. This was before our field day last week. You can see the plots may be a little better. They're expressing themselves. So this is just a week ago today. Any machinery used that we had there, a nice field day. Another look at the skip row corn. And so our end goals are basically to bring a systems approach that will keep you as a farmer profitable while you switch over to, let's say, a more environmentally friendly and economically friendly way to your business. So it's got to be a system. It's corn genetics plus biology plus cover crops plus no-till or strip-till or some type of reduced tillage system, or at least tillage no deeper than 2 inches so we don't disrupt our biology that we're trying to grow. So I look at we're growing 3 crops out there. We're growing our corn crop for yield to bring money to the operation. We're growing our cover crop to keep taking everything the sun has to offer to build our soils for fertility. So that's why we want to live root as long as we can, even in the north, so that biology is fed and kept alive. And then we're feeding that biology crop, which feeds our regular crop by the cover crops that we have out on the farm. So and then the other benefits would be the carbon markets, or for me personally, it's just reducing exposure to toxins for the future generations. So my wife posted this on our bathroom mirror when we started our business 20 years ago in Puerto Rico. And I'm pretty sure we still go where there's not much of a path as we figure this out. But we want to invite as many of you along on this journey as we can. So with that, I got it wrapped up. I'll try and figure out how to uh, reduce my share if I can.
Yeah, think we're
But
good there.
okay.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Uh, Thank you for that great presentation. Please, just a reminder, everybody, please feel free to leave questions if you have questions in the Q&A uh, box on Zoom here. We'd love to take any questions that you have. We do have one. Could the resistance to armyworm be due to the presence of an endophyte living in the corn?
We haven't spent enough time documenting everything, but it's a combination. We know that we have like pubescence on the plant, we have thicker leaves, we have higher sugar content, uh, and I'm guessing we have endophytes in there as well. Uh, and because we've created the pore spaces in these plants for them to do that. So I think it's highly probable, but I don't have the scientific data to say definitively, yes, that's true.
Right. Could you talk a little more about the interaction between cover crops and corn and why that matters? You're trying to create a relationship there. Uh, why does that matter? And what does it mean?
Well, if you think about what Mother Nature does, even in the prairies that we're in here, there was probably 140 different species of grasses and forbs and broadleaves, whatever, growing in the prairies, and we want to take it down to one, to a monocrop system. And I don't think that's the way nature was designed if we're paying attention. So we want to have as much diversity in that soil so that these crops work together. And so I've always believed that what you breed for, you find. And so if nobody's been breeding for corn that works with cover crops, then that's why we don't have it today. So I know that we'll actually have it if we keep this work up, and we may have it sooner than later. I think we actually have products that work right now with cover crops. But diversity is the key. Genetic diversity in your hybrids, genetic diversity in your cover crops, and genetic diversity in your biology. And then that's how you're going to weather the extremes that show up in a growing season.
Right. Uh, Tar spot. Hear a lot of talk about that in the industry. Have you seen any instances of that with your corn? Any issues on your work so far?
So again, I don't have definitive answers on this. I don't work in a heavy tar spot area, but my friend Kyle does. And so we send our hybrids down there to get looked at. Are they susceptible? Yes, when we inoculate. Are they totally wiped out? No, not really. Um, and so we know there's genetic differences in how they accept it. And we believe a couple things that we're a little more focused on the Western corn boil. So if you have more Goss's wilt tolerance, you're probably going to have more tolerance to tar spot. Now that I don't have that confirmed, but that's a trend we're seeing. I also know that when we have better soil health, we have less incidence of these diseases because the plant can fend it off. And for me, the key number is for Brix level in our corn is to be at 12 or higher. A lot of your problems go away. And most corn today, if you test it in our current system, is probably running 6 or less. And it's especially worse if you plant a GMO crop and apply glyphosate. We just can't seem to get them high enough to not need the accessories that the companies that develop that seed sell as well to go on their crop. Yeah, I'm a little bit cynical. I earned my gray hair. So
It's a free country, not a problem.
yeah.
Uh, okay, still haven't had any other questions come in yet. So what are some of the big developments you think you'll be having this year? What do you think what's coming down the pike that you're working on this year?
So we're definitely very excited to figure out how this nitrogen trait comes forward and how much we can actually recommend to reduce nitrogen in the future. And so we have our first trials from going from zero applied nitrogen to full nitrogen. And we've run our advanced pipeline through that this year to get a handle on how that's going to look. So then in the future, we'll be planning to develop at maybe 50% nitrogen for our hybrids to see how they perform. But on our nursery work that I talk about for the inbred development, I do not apply any nitrogen on those. So they're figuring out how to scrap for what they need. Working with the soil because I believe they farm the microbes they want that help them out. And you can tell when you see these massive root systems from the drought work that they're working hard under there, and the soil looks pretty cool around those roots what they do.
Right. Oh, one other quick question, and we may wrap up after this. What, in terms of corn, the residue left behind with your hybrids, there's always a question of, getting it to break down in a no-till system. What have you seen with your hybrids compared to, typical corn?
So maybe in general, I'll answer this. If we're spraying fungicides on our crop because it's not healthy enough, we're killing the very fungi that actually breaks down our stocks in the field. That's where we start at. And if you apply that fungicide, that stays in that stock and doesn't break down right away until some other bacteria comes and breaks it down. So then you have a need then for stubble digesters or something like that to keep the residue down. But as you build your soil health with less disturbance, then you have all these other critters that live in the soil helping break down the soil besides the fungi and the bacteria. You get earthworms and I've literally seen earthworms come up and grab a leaf and take it into the soil. I mean, so that's why I'm really pushing no-till or some type of reduced work so that these critters that live under their soil can really help us out with our farming.
Great,
So.
great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate the detailed answer on that. Don't have any other questions that have come in, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank uh, everybody for attending and just want to remind you that uh, today's presentation and audio will be made available to you on the No Till Farmer website, and you also get an email within 48 hours with a link to the recorded presentation. On behalf of Bass Hybrids, Ed Baumgartner, and No Till Farmer, I want to thank everybody for attending today and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Do it.
Take care.